Meeple Nation Podcast, episode 516, Campaign and/or Battle Card-Driven Games.
Welcome, citizens, to Meeple Nation. Grab your favorite beverage, pull up a chair, warm up those dice, and join us at the game table as we discuss board games and the board gaming world. Each week, the hosts of Meeple Nation share their love for board games and the amazing memories that come from playing games with some very outstanding people. Let us now join our hosts in their natural habitat, the game table.
The Meeple Nation podcast is sponsored by Game Toppers LLC. We love our Game Toppers, and we know you will too. Convert any space into an epic and amazing game space, perfect for all of your gaming needs. Portable, high-quality materials, tons of accessories to go with them, leg kits, dining leaf covers, you name it, they've got it. It's awesome. We love them. GameToppersLLC.com. Go check it out.
For a while, that was very rhythmical.
That was what I was going for.
Nailed it.
First try.
Nice.
Silly.
We are the hosts of Meeple Nation. I'm Nathan Howard.
And I am Douglas Stewart.
We are out Andy. We were glad he was back last week, but life gets in the way sometimes, and he wasn't able to join us tonight. So hopefully we will be the three of us again next week. We have an awesome webpage. We love our webpage.
Do we? Do we love our web? We do. No, we do. Yeah. The answer is yes. Yeah, we love it. Yeah.
It's full of all of our resources. We have all of our past episodes there. Our social media is there. We have some blogs. There's bios. There is a link to our email. If you can't find that, that's meeplenation@gmail.com. Email us with all sorts of questions. We would love to chat, and we would love to discuss some of those on air. Also, there's a link to our Patreon page. We love our patrons. Our patrons make so much happen for us that allow us to produce some extra content, help motivate us to get more to the table, and get together to discuss more about what we get to the table. If you too want to be a patron, jump over to our website and then skip and hop on over to that Patreon link and become a patron of the podcast. We would appreciate it. All that can be found at meeplenation.com.
Fantastic. So Nathan, what have you been playing this week?
You know what is really funny is I really want to talk about Maracaibo again. I am so giddy about this game. I love it.
Yeah, it's really good.
So many great experiences, but I'm going to talk about a game that you taught me, one that I instantly turned around and bought.
As you are wont to do.
As I sometimes do. And this is one that I think my wife is very much going to enjoy, which is the only reason I bought it. If it was just something that you and I would be playing, not that big of a deal. But if this is a game that I think I can get my wife to play, the opportunity to have that here and teach her builds for sure. And this game is Ancient Knowledge. This is a game where you are in a race to create monuments and to have those monuments in your timeline. And as those monuments age and is it called decay?
Yes. Yeah, they decay.
They decay, and they're going to go to your past. And then if you have lost knowledge in your past, then those are going to count against you at the end of the game. Each of these monuments have the opportunity to give you some points. Some of them allow you to tree off of each other to increase those points.
Well, it's kind of interesting because like there's no two that are the same. It's one of those games where there's no repeat monuments, and they all have a slightly different thing that they do. Some may have the build phase abilities on them. Most of them are going to have points, whether it's, maybe just a couple, but some have a lot of points. And then there's a ton of them who have almost what you would consider to be like an end game scoring objective on them. So they're going to move across your timeline, and then they're going to eventually decay into your past. And the objective is to try to meet those objectives, get them into your past and meet those objectives. And it's kind of interesting because I've taught this a number of times. Every time you put a monument out into your timeline, it gets sort of seeded or populated with a bunch of knowledge.
Right.
And then you have to pull that knowledge off. It is like representative of you using that knowledge, absorbing it into your culture, so to speak, from a thematic standpoint. But it doesn't give you points. You need to use up that knowledge, because if you don't and it decays and there's knowledge left on there, then that knowledge goes into your lost knowledge, and that's negative points. Right. And every time I teach this, it trips people up because everyone goes into it expecting like, oh, I'm going to pull all these little tokens off and they're going to score me a ton of points. And it's like, au contraire. You're actually going to pull them off of there so that you don't go negative points. Yep. And I really like that. And then you're going to try to build up your points by meeting all of those objectives.
Yeah. And then there's knowledge. There's the whole knowledge board over there where you're trying to, during the first half of the game, there's 2 rows of the level 1 knowledge and 1 row of the level
technologies.
Technology.
Yeah.
And there's 1 row of the harder technologies, which are going to be end game scoring. But after somebody has 7 monuments in their past, you're going to get rid of that middle one where you're going to flip it over. So now there's going to be 2 rows of level 2 technology and 1 row of level 1 technology.
Yep.
But the level 1 is going to allow you to, a lot of those cards are going to allow you to draw cards because drawing cards is kind of not a built-in mechanic. Like most deck builders, not that this is a deck builder, this is more of a tableau builder, but there's no automatic card draw.
You have to build your own card draw engine.
Yeah.
Now, one of the actions you can take is to just draw a card, but it's really inefficient. You can do it and you can do fine. And if people are using that action a lot to just draw cards, because you only get 2 actions on your turn. So you could just on your turn draw a couple cards. You could do that. But there are so many other efficient things to do with those other actions you can take that it's a little bit wasteful. So you want to build a card draw engine, which I think is one of the fun puzzles to solve.
Yeah. And it is a necessity. You also have a section on your board for artifacts, and those artifacts is probably one of the bigger things that's going to help you build that engine, because unlike your monuments, the artifacts don't go to your past. They don't decay. They're going to be there on your board forever. There's 1 or 2 cards that will allow you to swap out or force your opponent to swap out a card. But for the most part, you're just going to try to take advantage of those artifacts that you have to build your engine, to make your monuments cheaper, to be able to advance your cards in a way that's going to score you the most points. Great game. Very much enjoyed my experiences with it. Can't wait to get it to the table with my wife. And it's not a requirement, but I do like it when a game has a great BGA implementation, and this does as well.
Yeah, and we're in the middle of our first game of playing it on BGA, and so far I really like it. It's a good implementation.
Maybe we need to get BGA to be our sponsor as well.
Yeah, we do talk about it a lot, but we get to play a lot of the games repeatedly on BGA. Yeah. We always prefer the table.
Always prefer the table.
Yep, but we can't. The reality is we're all busy people with families and jobs and everything else, and so a lot of that play does have to come on BGA, and we love that that's an option. And when the implementation is good and works well, we're all about it.
Yeah, and I mean all of our plays are turn-based, so we're not all necessarily sitting down together, which is the big point of game night, right? If we're going to sit down virtually, we're not going to meet. We're going to meet in person together because we're all fairly close proximity. So that's an opportunity. But other people like Jody, I'm consistently playing 3 games with Jody, and those have been great. Maybe we're going to expand that a little bit more, and we'll see. But I got to get Jody to stop beating me first.
I can't help you with that problem. No, that's fantastic. So the little game that I wanted to talk about this week was Silver and Gold Pyramids.
This was a great game. I very much enjoyed this.
It really is. Now, Silver and Gold, the original game, this is a Phil Walker Harding game. This made my list. We did a list a while back of games that we think should be in every collection. This was a game that made my list of games that I think should be in everybody's collection. This is a wonderful little flip and write game. In the original, you're just flipping over these cards that have like Tetris shapes on them. And then you have all of these little island cards that are sort of, they're grids, but they're abnormally shaped grids. And sometimes they've got little holes in them and that kind of thing. And you're just trying to use the Tetris shapes that come up on the cards to fill out the islands. And you can kind of combo off of some stuff. If you cover up certain markings on the islands, you can collect coins and there's palm trees and you can, trigger additional hexes that can be crossed off, that kind of thing. And with the points and scoring, there's a little bit of combo building and you're just trying to get the highest score. It's a fantastic game. It always hits. It's a great one for new players. It's a great one for traveling. There's a whole host of reasons why I think it should be on every gamer's shelf. This is the sequel to that. This is Silver and Gold Pyramids, and it's a little bit more of a gamer's game. Just a little bit more. Don't want to be misunderstood there, because this is not like this doesn't turn it into a super hard version of the game.
It's not complex. It just evolved the game to make it. I mean, I think all of us have enjoyed it more And as we were talking about that, and a lot of that is because Silver and Gold is a great game, but this just gives it a little bit more meat.
Yep, it does. So in this one, you're going to be delving through these pyramids instead of trying to fill up islands. And every pyramid at the top is going to have an entrance, and every pyramid at the bottom is going to have like a little tomb that you're trying to uncover or find. So as you play those pieces out, rather than trying to just fill the pyramid up, you're actually trying to create a path from the entrance down to the tomb. But you have to be strategic in how you create that path, because there are obstacles in your way, primarily in the form of these skulls. And anytime you have to cross over or cross out a skull, you have to go over to your little score sheet and mark it off. And the more of those you acquire, the more negative points you get at the end of the game. In fact, I think if you fill up both rows, it's like negative 50, 60 points, something like that. It's a lot. So you really have to be careful that you're not going over too many of those. At the same time, you're trying to collect gems along the way. As many of those, you kind of like scooping those up as you go along. And, you know, individually they're worth a point a piece, but if you can collect them in sets, they give you some bonus points. Every round you can pick up a torch, which gives you some extra points. There's potions that help you heal. There's just, I think thematically, just some really fun things. They also did something that I really appreciate, which was they streamlined some of the fiddliness of the original game in that they numbered all the cards. So when you fill one up and you need to grab a new one from the center row, if there's ever a tie, if two people complete it at the same time, you go by whoever has the lower numbered card. And I really like that, because in the original Silver and Gold, the rule book is written, you have to track people's turns, because you're supposed to take those cards in turn order. And that gets really difficult to do, because you're usually just flipping those shape cards over so fast that you lose track of whose turn it is. In fact, at one point I had a little coin that I just kept in the box, and I would just move it around the draw pile to match the people's position around the table. So I just move it and draw the card, move it and draw the card, so that we could kind of do that in turn order. But it just got to be such a pain that we just were like, okay, look, it's just first come, first serve.
Yeah.
And so I really like that they recognized that, hey, that's a little bit of a fiddly problem, and we can fix it by putting numbers on the cards. So it's just a fun little evolution of that Silver and Gold system. I like both of these games quite a bit. I wouldn't ever turn my nose up at going back to the original Silver and Gold, but Pyramids is definitely my new preferred way of playing this game.
Absolutely. And you talk about that path going in there, trying to avoid all that. I think that is what really just elevates it from the original Silver and Gold.
Yeah, 100%. We didn't really mention it, but I think it does bear mentioning that the pyramids also come in 3 different colors. And so there's actually kind of a race element to it as well, where you're actually trying to race to collect sets of those colors, because you'll score points on kind of a first come, first serve basis with the colors. So really cool game, fun evolution.
Well, those were some great highlights. Now let's turn the page as we move into this week's discussion.
Yeah. And when you had first kind of created the notes for this, I was glad you put some clarification in here, because I was a little confused.
Yes. Yeah. So we look at this week. We will begin discussing campaign games and games that can also use battle cards. Now, just to clarify, this is not a campaign game theme. This is not a campaign game style.
Yes.
This is a campaign mechanic, which means an epic battle, right? So it's a military campaign. So we have a war. First thing that comes to mind is a game like Risk. All 3 of us have a game of Risk in our collection in one form or another. I have a Star Wars version. Doug, you have the Lord of the Rings Trilogy edition, and Andy also has a Lord of the Rings edition. Different version. All 3 of us have a different version of Risk. How often have you played your copy of it?
It gets played maybe once every couple of years, because my boys like it. We'll bust it out on a Sunday every now and then.
I've played mine once.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. And that's, for me, that's a typical, Risk. And my version of Risk, the Star Wars version of Risk, is by far limited. I think it goes from 45 to 90 minutes, is somewhere within that range. So
yeah,
it is very palatable that way for a Risk game. Plus, it has a Star Wars theme, and it has a lot of little cool TIE fighters and X-Wings.
Gotta love that.
But yeah, Risk is that's the kind of campaign that we're talking about. If Andy were here and we were talking about the other campaign, Andy would be very, very, very cross with us. He'd be upset. He might even be livid that we would miss his favorite game to buy, campaign games. I'm not going to say it's his favorite game. It might be, but it is for sure his favorite kind of games to buy.
Right. So, which is why I was glad for the clarification, because it could be kind of confusing, especially since a lot of my very favorite, the quote unquote campaign, the kind we're talking about now, this military crusade, shall we say, a lot of my favorites are played in a campaign style.
Yes.
But we specifically are talking about just that campaign mechanism.
Yes.
So let's dive in. Well, give us some examples so people kind of can know what we're talking about.
Like right off, first thing we did talk about was Risk. You have Lord of the Rings. A lot of those games, in fact, I can't think of any game that's in that style that's not going to fall into this category. And you have, the battles of Sauron, the battles of the Free People. You have Star Wars. You have the Rebel versus the Empire. You have a lot of those games where you're having epic battles between armies. And as such, some of those games that kind of come to mind is the Pathfinder Adventure Card Series. This is a game that I enjoyed. I haven't played it for a while, but the biggest reason that this game doesn't get to the table, for me anyways, is I really despise the whole 30 minutes it takes between a game session, because you have to
Yes.
deconstruct every deck. You have to sort it out. Then you have to reconstruct those decks. You have to shuffle them all again. And if you have a table full of people, if you have 4 or 5 people, I can't remember how many people it goes up to, but if you have a table full of people and everybody is doing that and doing that faster, that can cut that time down.
Yeah. But if you got one person trying to take care of all that deck management, it's a bear.
Yeah. It just became something that I don't want to ever play this game by myself ever, because it's no fun. There are some app versions that kind of take away some of that, and that makes it a lot of fun because you can just go from game to game to game to game to game. And the game is really good. I very much enjoy the Pathfinder Adventure Card Game series. There's the Rise of the Rune Lords, there's the Mummy's Mask edition, and then there's the 3rd edition, which doesn't have all the extra content that the first two did. The first two had some subscription services that you could get the promo cards, you could get the little booster pack, and use that to enhance your game and evolve your game, and you could get that game to the table a lot. That was a great model for them, and it worked for them, but I think it kind of fizzled out by the time the 3rd rendition of it came out, because it didn't have any of that content. That in itself is a great you have the forces of evil, and you have the forces of the free people that are trying to fight against that to protect the lands. These games have been a ton of fun, ones that I've enjoyed, but those games have a little bit of dust on them on the shelves. In fact, I've tried to cull them the last 2 years, and they keep coming home with me. So apparently everybody that wanted it has it.
Yes, and I think the app has replaced the cards for many, many people. A lot of people who are interested in this will just download the app and play it that way, especially since the app can do all that card management in about a blink of an eye.
Yeah, it makes it so much more enjoyable, I think.
Yeah. Now, a game that I wanted to bring up and talk about was one that I think blends. You talk about the military campaign, but, when we were discussing what we wanted this list to include, we decided that, perfectly fine for like a political campaign, economic campaign, that kind of thing. And one of the games that I think blends all three of those things, maybe a little bit less on the political side, but definitely a military and an economic campaign together very nicely, is Scythe.
Yeah.
So where each player is, you're leading your faction on a campaign to expand across the board, gather resources, economic favor, develop, popularity across the land, and engage in fighting when and if needed. So that's one of my favorite games that I think fits this category. And if you put the Rise of Fenris in there, you can play this campaign game in campaign style.
Hand in hand, campaign, double down on that campaign.
Absolutely.
Another one that I got as a Kickstarter way back in 2022 was Northgard Uncharted Lands. This game looked really cool. I was very excited for it. We played it. It was sitting here on the table. Andy was here. He was a little bit late, so he was waiting for a game. So he opened that box, read the rules, and we played that game. And I really, really wanted to enjoy this game, but I've had no desire to play it since, which is really sad because it actually is a really good game. And I haven't necessarily not had any desire to play it, but it's we talk about it all the time that maybe we have that issue of way too many games, not enough time to play them all. And this is one that just kind of drifted to the back of the shelf and maybe put on that top shelf so it wasn't reached as many times. But it's a fun game. You have that epic battle where you're trying to war with your tribes. You also have that exploration that's in it. I can't remember how Andy felt about this, but the game really kind of focuses. I mean, it tries to take those rules and kind of, and the gameplay and just kind of bring it all to a quick, kind of streamlines that process to make it quick so you could play and get it done. And that actually worked really well. We were able to just get it to the table, get it played. And I don't know if it made it too simple or what it was, or maybe that Andy beat my socks off, or that Andy beat me again, because Andy always wins and whines about it.
Yes, he does. Andy, I hope you're listening to this.
But the Northgard was a lot of fun, and I think I'm going to try to sell it this year. If it doesn't sell, that means it probably needs to hit the table again.
Yeah, well, it's one I would definitely like to try. I haven't been able to play this one, and it actually looks pretty intriguing. I remember when this one first came out, hearing some interesting things about it that led me to believe that it was had some innovation and some new ideas, and that's something I'm always interested in. So maybe we need to try this one more time.
Yeah, and I do really enjoy the whole exploration. You play out your tiles, and as you explore, you're going to kind of expand that map in a grid. The tiles all kind of fit together. It's a game that I enjoyed playing, but like I said, it's just not enjoying it enough to go back to it time and time again.
Right.
Or that it didn't build. I mean, I talked earlier about that I wanted to talk about Maracaibo again, where I'm just so anxious to play that game. And it's a game I don't even own. And every time we're at Andy's house or every time we're coming over here on a Thursday night, I'm like, hey, Andy, bring Maracaibo and let's see if we can get that to the table.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when our game time's limited, you want to either play something new or you want to play the best of the best.
Yeah.
If it's not new and it's not necessarily the best of the best, it goes away quick.
Yeah. And next week when I was making my top 5 for this, I had the same thing happen to me for my one of my games in my top 5. I was cleaning it up and I'm like, oh, just even reorganizing this game, I so want to play this game now.
I know exactly which one you're talking about, and I agree.
Yeah. So I think I'm gonna try to get that going on a Thursday night, depending on if we can get a consistent number of 5 of us here.
Yep. Well, I love that because it's one that I want to play and one that we'll talk about when we do our top 5s because I think it's on both of our lists, actually. Yes. So that will be
pretty sure it's on all 3 of our lists. We don't have access to Andy's list yet.
Yes. It would surprise me if it's not.
Yeah.
So, okay. Couple of games that I wanted to ask you about because, we rely on sort of the labeling system, if you will, of BGG.
Yeah.
Right. When we make these lists, we they're the ones
it simpler for sure.
Yeah. And so they're the ones that come up with the categories and then, the games get labeled with certain categories or certain labels that match those categories. And then we can go through and sort them in ourselves. It's a great tool. I love BGG and I love that it allows us to do that.
For sure.
But sometimes it leaves me a little confused with some of these.
Yep.
And so I had a couple on here that I wanted to ask you about. The first one that I wanted to ask you about was it put Sleeping Gods on here. And I don't consider this a campaign style game. This is just a really great adventure game. You get kind of sucked in your boat. I know it's a plane for the sequel, but we haven't played that one yet. But we've played some of the original Sleeping Gods. A campaign to figure out what's going on, a campaign to return home, a campaign to
defeat the gods,
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. And we didn't get into to experience the campaign of the campaign game. Can I say campaign in a sentence too many times?
We're not confusing anybody. Yeah. Definitely not.
But the story-driven elements of the game, maybe we didn't quite fully discover that campaign front of the game.
And that's maybe possible. I just don't know that labeling it with that helps in any significant way, but maybe it does. Maybe we just need to play it a little more and that will kind of reveal itself. So
yeah. And as we pull back the curtain a little bit too, is we go through these mechanics and we say, okay, this mechanic looks good. Let's talk about this one. And then we check to make sure that we have more than 2 games within that mechanic to talk about. Or like we were going to be talking about auction games and auction bidding games. And Doug, you had like 3 in your collection. Andy had 2 in his collection. And I had like 20 in my collection. and we don't want to hear me talk all the time.
You could have just recorded that podcast.
Yeah, I could just do that
episode
by
on your own.
myself.
Yeah.
So, we want to find something that allows us to, yes, definitely talk about mechanic, definitely talk about something that these game elements share. But exactly like you said, this gives us a chance to talk about some games that we wouldn't normally talk about.
Yeah. Which is something that I do like. Now, the other one that have just a little bit of mixed feelings about, and maybe you can walk me off the ledge on this one too, is it also put unmatched the Tales to a Maze.
This one really baffled me as well.
Yeah, and so you do take on these characters represented by decks of cards, and you're battling. Now, we have only played the one side. I've played it several times, but I have not played the Martians yet. I've only played the side where Mothman is invading.
Right.
And I guess you could call Mothman's invasion a campaign, but not really.
Yeah,
Again, like that qualification just doesn't really mean anything or convey anything important about the game. And so I'm not really sure why it got that classification in BG. I mean, I love the game, but I don't know why it got that classification in BGG.
Yeah.
Now, when we flip the board over and go to the Martian side, that might be a little bit more of a battle or war-like campaign, for
kind of an Independence
Earth's being
Day
invaded.
feel.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Although the map is zoomed into like a farm rather than like a big city or a lot of land. So
They don't want you abducting those cows.
I get that, but I just don't know that I would call that a campaign game.
Well, maybe it's a campaign between the cows and the aliens.
Oh, that's what it is. We're stuck behind a big interstellar war between cows and the aliens that we didn't know existed.
Yes.
Okay. That makes so much more sense. I feel so much better about it now. Cleared that right up.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, fantastic.
Another game that we actually, Doug, you and I just got the opportunity to start playing again. I've owned this game forever, but haven't actually gotten it to the table since. Actually, I don't know if I ever got it to the table. It's been so long since I played it. But that's Tiny Epic Defenders.
Yeah.
And we got the opportunity to lose together.
Yes, we did.
For our first experience of this.
Probably a lot because I didn't understand some of the shared action part of the game.
Yeah, you kept taking them all.
Yeah, and probably inefficiently.
And then when I took them all, it was definitely inefficient because we were fighting the big bad at the end, and I had just healed, so I ran over there, and then I got knocked off the mountain, and it was like I took all 4 actions to get there, and then I had to go back to the capital to regain my health again. But
yeah, we lost. But I'd like to try it again. Actually, interestingly enough, my copy of that just came in the mail today.
Oh, really?
So after playing it and watching the how to play and everything, I was like, okay, because I actually like this. I think a little tiny cooperative game like this, it meets a need in my game collection that I don't have. And I love that. I've tried some of like the button shy cooperative games. Those don't hit to the same level that I think this one does. And especially that, it's just got that fun, like fantasy theme.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a quick, neat little game that if you can get to the table and just play through it, you're in and out of this in 20 to 30 minutes, I think pretty easy.
Yeah. It's just really quick.
Yeah. Just running through the cards and trying to defend your city.
Territories.
Yeah, your territory. I definitely think this one qualifies, right? You are defending the city and its surrounding territories from, outside invaders.
So something else I think that we need to start creating, and I don't have the logistics for this just yet, but there are both games on your list and games on Andy's list that I really want to play.
Yeah. Yes, and there's many, many, many in this room that I'm staring at right now that I want to play.
Yeah. Somehow we need to get, we need to make like a top 2 or 3 of your list, in your list of games in this category. These are the top 3 that I want you, Doug, to teach me, or I want you, Andy, to teach me, or maybe you want me to teach you.
I like this.
We need to take this opportunity, at least the top 1. Maybe each of us pick one. Say like on your list, I really want to play Deliverance.
Yeah. Yes. I just punched it the other night.
Did you? It looks
so
really
good, right?
cool.
Yeah.
And on
Can't
Andy's, there's Battlelore. Battlelore is a game that I just have some curiosity. I really want to give that a try. Warrior Knight was also one that really sounded pretty good. And even as Horde's High Command, which is an older game. Right?
I'm looking at pictures of this Battlelore. This looks great.
Yeah.
Why aren't we playing this?
Exactly.
Why aren't we playing this right now? This looks really good.
Somehow we need to get us to commit to playing some of these games because I know There's always games that are on my shelf of shame that are in these categories that we're talking about. I'm looking at this Hordes High Command, came out in 2013. That's in Andy's collection, and it looks pretty cool. The idea of it looks pretty simple. Looks like it's kind of a card drafting game, which is also right up Andy's alley. I mean, it doesn't have super high reviews. It's only got the 6.3 rating, but it looks like something that would be right up our alley. We talk about our enjoy for Dominion, our enjoy for Thunderstone Quest, all these, that this would fit right in that niche. And I'm sure that's probably why he owns this. Yep. But it either had to have fallen flat for him, or we need to get it to the table.
Or it's just a time issue like so many other things.
I hate that time issue.
It's the worst.
But then Andy really also has Seafall, which is a game that I really want to get played again.
Yep. I know how you feel about Seafall, and I know how Andy feels about Seafall. So that's just going to be the continuing. That is like the unstoppable force meeting the immovable object on that one. And I think they are just stalled out. I don't know that that's ever going to change.
It is. Yeah, it is just. It's not going to happen. But I love Seafall. Such a good game. I really want to try to get my wife and my daughter to play that with me. Do a three player of that. But getting my daughter to consistently come to the table is going to be a hard thing. She's got school going on and she's got a life. She's busy. I wish she was like 12 again, so I could keep her in one place and have her here more frequently. She's all grown up. It's more of a challenge to keep her in one place.
So there's a couple more on Andy's list that I really want to talk about, but I have a real sneaky suspicion that they are on his top 5.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna forego. We'll wait until next week to talk about the top 5s. And if they're not on his top 5s, then maybe we'll revisit them.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure they are. So I'm looking forward to talking about our top 5s because there's some really good ones on there.
Yeah, there are for sure. This has actually been a pretty good collection of games. There's some others that some simple games like Castle Panic, where you're in the central castle and you have areas outside the castle and you have monsters coming at you and you have to defend them. That game has been a lot of fun. Very simple game, very lightweight, but it plays 1 to 6 players, which is kind of nice to get a group of people together. More of your younger players would really enjoy this game, play with mom and dad, but that you're not limited to that because there are other options as well. Another game that's been on my shelf, I played once, and that is Alone. And I really like the mechanics of this game because it kind of goes along with Night Cage, where it's similar. Where your character is, you can only illuminate the areas that are adjacent to you. And so when you move forward, that board's going to change, and the light that you've left becomes dark behind you, and you're lighting up the area in front of you, and you're just trying to get from one side of the board to the other without getting got.
I'm excited you own this one. I want to play this. This looks really good.
And another one that I'm really excited about that I think you'll be excited about, Doug, which is actually just right over there over your left shoulder, is a game called Adventure Tactics Dominions? Domiani's Tower?
Domiani's Tower?
Domiani's Tower?
Sure.
Domiani's Tower. It's a kind of a campaign game, up to 5 players. This is the second edition that's sitting right there. I had the first edition, but this kind of updates that, fixes a couple of issues. And for some reason, I also ordered the upgrade pack to the first edition that is no longer in my collection. But I got it. Yay.
Cool. Well, maybe I'll go buy the first edition and then borrow your
There you go.
pack.
But I'm really excited about this game. It has some pretty cool miniatures, and the story looks really good. And this is one that I moved it from the shelf and put it in a temporary shelf so that I could get it to the table. It's not super complex. It's a 2.8 or 2.58, and it plays in 45 to 90 minutes a session. This is a game that I'm really pretty excited to get to the table.
Awesome. Me too. Every time I look at it over here, I'm like, that's one I've heard really good things about. We need to play that. And so, yep, that'll be really fun. Sooner than later.
Sooner than later.
All right. Well, were there any others that you wanted to mention or talk about while we're here?
No, I think I've got everything that I wanted to hit on. I got some games that are on my shelf of shame that I want to get to play. And I think trying to work in this element where there's something on your list, Doug, there's something on Andy's list that we want to get played. I think somehow we need to implement that so that we can get some of these other cool games that, maybe games that I have put on the shelf higher up that maybe you have an interest in.
100%. I love it. That's a great idea. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's go do it right now.
Let's start with adventure tactics over there.
Sounds good. Well, on that note, until next time.
We'll see you running from the table to get your new game to the table.
I got it, Nate.
There it is.
Thank you for listening and being a part of Meeple Nation. If you would be so kind as to follow, subscribe, share, and rate or review this podcast, it really helps to spread the fun. You can be more involved in supporting the podcast by joining the nation at patreon.com/MeepleNation, or you can find a link at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. And while you're there, look at all our extra content. There are links to all our past episodes, a wide variety of blogs, pictures from our Instagram feed, and bios for all the hosts and our awesome bloggers. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all under Meeple Nation. If you would like to chat with the hosts or other members of the nation, you can join our Facebook group, Meeple Nation Off Air. We hope to see you again at a game night, a con, or maybe a suspense-driven evening of Werewolf. Thank you for listening and supporting Meeple Nation, and stay tuned for next week's episode.
Thank you so much for listening. We very much want to thank our patrons who help keep the podcast running. I personally want to thank my co-hosts for all the help they provide with both content here on the podcast, in addition to what we have available on our website. Without them, the podcast would not happen. If you too would like to support the podcast, you can join the nation at patreon.com/Meeple_nation. Or you can find a link to Patreon at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. If you have any questions, comments, or games you feel should be on our radar, you can always reach us at meeplenation@gmail.com. We can't wait to hear from you. I am grateful to Doug and Andy who helped me edit episodes, and I want to thank James and Kim Clark who do the editing on our blogs and on our webpage, which can be found at meeplenation.com. We want to thank Brain Detergent for our music. If you want to find more from him, you can follow his links that can be found on our webpage, or simply search for Brain Detergent on YouTube to find more of his tracks. Thank you again for listening and being part of the Meeple Nation community.